r/Askreddit by Reddit and chill. Escorts of Reddit. What was the weirdest, most disgusting thing a client asked you to do? I used to work for a phone sex hotline. So it's not quite the same. But man. Have you ever tried to describe making somebody into soup and then eating that soup without laughing? But yeah, gotta somehow make it. Full stop. Sexy? It's not easy. It's really not. Their sexual fantasy was being turned into soup. Clients wanted me to eat spicy foods the whole day until I came to him. He asked if I wanted to shit in his mouth and fart in his face. I refused to shit in his mouth, but he gave me $400 extra if I farted in his face, so I did it. He then got tired and told me I could go home even though he paid for the whole night. When I asked my co-workers about him, they told me he always tries it with the new ones but no one ever did it. Edit. I'm not from the US and it's legal where I live. I am not an escort, but I'd fart in a dude's face for $400. $400 is $400. I had a guy pay me to watch me paint my toes once. I mean, I think he was paying me for other things too. But never actually got to that because I apparently did a very excellent job painting them. Was your client Quentin Tarantino? Guy in his mid-40s I'd seen a few times liked to buy me outfits. Have me dress up in them then get me out of them before during sex. Nothing unusual. Usually fairly skimpy dresses, etc. After one session he got incredibly excited because he said next time he was going to bring me some of his wife's clothes for us to use. Then he'd take them back to her. That weirded me out a bit. That dude is nuts. Dude paid me $3,000 to piss on him, peg him, tie him up and leave a dildo in his ass. Then take a photo and make a post on Craigslist, back when personals was still a thing, with the photo and the address and room of the hotel he was in. Leaving the door unlocked so whoever saw the ad could come in and have their way. I didn't have to stay for that. But this seems dangerous. Not because of the strangers coming in and having his way with him. But what if they didn't? Is he just tied up in that hotel room until room service comes? That would be one sore a-hole and one traumatized room service attendant. Not me. But my friend is an escort. She said a client once paid her triple to stick her face in the toilet and give her a swirly while he had sex with her. Said she liked it more than she expected. On a related note, I have a friend who told me a girl he picked up at club asked him to do this to her. So, maybe more common a thing than people think. I once had somebody that wanted to watch me with somebody else. Doesn't seem like a bad request until his idea of somebody else was his own reflection in the mirror. He wanted to stand in front of a full body sized mirror and watch me drizzle whipped cream and chocolate syrup over his reflection and lick it off before making love to it. BTW. This was also his way of cheating on his wife without actually cheating. We never made any physical contact. Easiest $800 I've ever made. When he told you what he wanted, what was your reaction versus what were you thinking? Licking his feet while he watched The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Extremely weird but not especially difficult. I didn't mind that much. Hope them feets were as fresh as will. A client hired me to hold his penis while he was peeing in a public bathroom. Weird AF. I had a girlfriend always wanting to hold mine as well. I asked a girl this once and she said a guy asked her to pretend to breastfeed his baby. She obviously wasn't lactating, so she couldn't actually feed it. She declined the service. Yeah, including a child in your sexual fantasy is super sketch. So, not me, but an escort I know. She told me she was paid $2,000 by a man who hid under the bed all day and masturbated while she serviced other men. And to top it all off, after every guy was done and left, he would eat her out. I need to go brush my teeth now. Used to work for a guy that loved black people. He hired a male escort who has fit and showed off his muscles well. They didn't have sex and all they did was cuddle. My boss would be the little spoon and he would just admire the muscles. He also loved the women. He had 3 female escorts that he loved to be with because they were very black and he grew his hair out so they could make it into cornrows. He would get excited whenever a black adult would go to his place. He even sponsored a competitive eater because he was enamored by the guy. Dude has a stronger race preference than gender preference. They hired me just so that they don't feel lonely at night. Nothing sexual at all. Aha. You're Sonny from The Catcher in the Rye. Wait, his daughter's underwear and clothing. From the pic he sent it looked like children underwear. Some things aren't worth the money. I'm hoping it was just a fantasy he had and not his actual daughter's clothing. Edit. Just remembered another one. He wanted me to book a bunch of appointments before him. I'm talking a few days worth of clients. Save the condoms with all these messages and feed it to him. That's the comment that's got me scowling at the screen. Not me, but actually my mother's story when she escorted many years ago. He would hide thousands of dollars throughout the room and would tie himself to a chair with rope and just be trapped while he watched her search for the money. Then she would leave with the money while he was chained to this chair. There was one time she felt bad and was worried that he wouldn't be able to get out, so she went back to check on him and he got so mad and didn't contact her again. WTF. This one guy wanted me to pour bleach on myself. Have never noped out faster than that. What the duck? There was an HBO special some years ago that interviewed prostitutes and the weird shit they did. The one I remember most was a large black lady. The old white guy would pick her up, take her to some crazy fancy dinner and make her eat a huge steak meal. Then hours later he would take her to a hotel so she could shit on a plate. He would then eat the turd like it was a fine dining experience. Only the most processed protein for this guy will do. This guy would regularly buy cups of my piss. $100 a cup. Which isn't a bad deal at all. I was getting to the point where I wasn't dealing with him as much anymore though. Because he was asking me to meet him at his house, etc. And I wasn't comfortable with that. So he comes in one night and is like, "So I want something to eat." I was like, "I need you to be really clear on what you mean." And he requests for me to shit in a cup and then spoon feed it to him. I excuse myself to the bathroom, shit in a plastic cup, wrap it in many paper towels, obtain a plastic spoon, and walk out to where he is. I sat down in a chair with my legs straddled apart, and he knelt down between my legs. I took one spoonful of shit and kinda helicoptered it into his mouth the way you would feed a toddler. He obviously was not into it. He made it through that one bite and called it quits. I apologized and was like, "Yee. Not sure what you expected. Sorry. Did my best." He gave me $300 and that was pretty much the end of that. Alright, that's enough Reddit for today. I seen a similar post a while back and one of the girls said a client paid money for her to fart on his face and she accidentally pushed a harder D, let loose a nugget on his face. Never laughed so hard. Did she want him to pay extra? Not me, but one of my friends works as a dominatrix and they've had some crazy requests from clients. There was a dude who wanted his testicles pierced with a syringe to drain out the semen. Another guy requested for both of his testicles to be surgically castrated. The story behind the second guy was that he would get off by exposing himself in public, which he would constantly get sent to prison for. So his idea was that if he cut off both his testicles, he wouldn't have the sexual desire to expose himself anymore and could live a normal life. If your defense in court is that you can't control it, and therefore voluntarily want to be castrated, I would say that's reasonable. Like a doctor could do that no problem. I remember reading a story about the lives of non-active pedophiles, or something like that. It was about people who were becoming attracted to children, but never acted voluntarily, got castrated before acting on their urges, because they knew how ducked up they were. Nothing real weird, but that's because I was a male escort and most of my clients were female, but this one time I was asked if they could keep my underwear, so I charged her an extra $60 for them. The only disgusting one was when I walked in the hotel that was filled with smoke from the 50 cigs in her ashtray and the very large woman had a towel folded at her feet for me to kneel and begin dining. I'm not saying she was. But have you ever been in a situation where the dinner was pretty disgusting? If so, how did you respond or proceed? If that was the case, okay, here's what I want. First we both get naked. Only we're wearing sailor hats. And then we get into a jacuzzi filled with Pepto-Bismol. And I clip your toenails and you shave my buttocks. LMAO, I forgot this existed. The rat race? Weirdest was probably when he got out a packet of Skittles and started eating while he was inside me. But hey, at least I'm not a Taurus. Just another day at the dealership. Did he at least offer to share the Skittles? Years ago a friend in the business asked me to come with her to a thing she had to do. I was apprehensive, but she tells me a client of hers has a kink for being mocked by women and he'd planned something elaborate and wanted a second girl. She told me it wouldn't involve sex and if I was uncomfortable I could leave. I was broke and in college, so I said sure. We walk in and the guy has the entire room covered in clear plastic tarps. It's a giant suite and he's moved all the furniture and things a safe distance. In the room there are 2 black Calvin Klein dresses and 2 pairs of black leather pumps in our sizes. He'd even bought pantyhose. Placed on a table near the clothes he wanted us to change into was an assortment of food and items he wanted us to throw at him. We changed in the bathroom and then spent about 2 hours throwing food, condiments, drinks and sticky things on him. It was a grocery cart's worth of stuff. It was odd but not a problem. He stood there in his underwear with goggles and we pelted him food and laughed at him. It goes down in my personal history as the weirdest thing I've ever done for money. Not me, but I have a friend that did cam work for a bit and does stand up now. YouTube.com link and list equals PLKSZ1MLQWP1WNFZZQ9 Psi56RWAMEXE and index equals 2. She tells it way better. But a dude was really upset when he learned she didn't have just like tons of jizz around to dump on herself and that you can make fake stuff in the microwave. Jazz around to dump on herself. Like vinyls or CDs? Tie me up to his bed. Could have gone wrong real quick, but the 600 was worth it. Guy was a bit creepy, but at least he didn't lock me in his bedroom and keep me as a sex slave. He was surprisingly a passionate lover. Just reading that was absolutely terrifying. You are brave AF. Lol, oh Jesus. Had a guy. He was about 400 pounds come in. Stripped down to his lacy black panties and just wanted to dry hump my ass for 30 minutes. He was a super cool client actually. Guy once paid to go into the washroom while he was asleep and slammed the door to wake him up. Gonna go ahead and assume this thread will be covered in poop. Literal shit all over the walls of this place. Nah, it's gonna be full of teenage boys and lonely men in their 20s pretending to be escorts and telling wholly fictional stories that are deliberately over the top. I'm not an escort. But there was one summer where I was a sugar baby to pay for some of my tuition. I never actually met up with anyone. But I did have a few strange requests. I don't think I really did it long enough to have any crazy stories. But here's a few highlights. One man really enjoyed swapping stories about sexual escapades. He frequented BDSM dungeons, parties, clubs and would bring along his current SB. Lots of these stories included pricking her with needles in between her fingers, on her nipples, and her vulva. He also once accidentally, I hope, texted me a message meant for his daughter, who was my age. A guy who paid me for clothed photos of myself. A man who wanted me to pretend to be his girlfriend. Then watch me cheat with a black acquaintance who was quite well endowed while I insulted him and told him he would never be as good at. A man who exclusively referred to his excretions as baby batter. My favorite weird payment was, instead of naked dancing, he paid me to play patty cake. It was joyous and it was the best $100 in 5 minutes I've ever made. I literally just told this story to some coworkers. Not me, but a friend of mine. Not an escort, but a waitress. She was offered an obscene sum of money by a guy who wanted her to poop on his glass coffee table while he laid underneath it. She turned him down. I believe that was a deleted scene and as good as it gets. Here's a bunch of answers to read through. Was half expecting this to be a rickroll. An escort friend of mine had a guy ask her to slowly crush a hamster or a mouse under her foot and heels while he jacked off for $500. He told her bigger animals like guinea pigs he would pay her more. She declined. These comments get weirder and weirder the more I keep scrolling. My client was the walking stereotype of r/just neckbeard things. He wanted me to eat Doritos and Mountain Dew. He was into femdom, so I had to bend him over and spank him while saying the same thing over and over. You should have used a serious tag. I had a regular client for a while who was a judge in family court. He had a micropenis and he was morbidly obese. His fantasies involved spanking young children. And he just wanted to rub himself on me while telling me stories that he considered erotic. It sounds pretty tame. But it was deeply disturbing and I genuinely worry that he jerks it to child abuse cases that he sees at work. Ducking like and subscribe.